As I stood in Unitarian Church in Brookline, Massachusetts, on October 27, 1880, my heart broke as I watched the only boy in the world I ever cared about say wedding vows to another woman. At the reception afterwards, I defiantly danced the soles off my shoes. 6 weeks later, I watched as that boy's sister, my closest friend Corinne, made her debut, something I had never been able to do because of my father's declining fortune. I was 19 years old, and many thought on my way to becoming a spinster. I could have married for money, I suppose, but decided to not even try. I would wait, because in my heart I knew that somehow, someday I would marry that boy, Theodore Roosevelt. Mine was a lifelong love affair. Although I was born in Norwich, Connecticut in 1861, by the time I was 2, my family was living off East 14th Street in New York City, where I played in Union Square Park with little Corinne Roosevelt, soon coming to know her older brothers, Elliot and T.D., as the family called him. Well, T.D. was my favorite, and I even let him play house with me as the mummy and he as the daddy. When we attended dancing school together, I made sure I danced most of all with T.D. Theodore, you may join in if you wish.
Delighted. I was born October the 27th, 1858, on East 20th Street in New York City. I had an older sister we called Bammy, a younger brother Elliot, and a younger sister Corinne. But I was a sickly child and suffered terribly with asthma. But with the encouragement of my father, I eventually made my body over. Yes, Edie was a favorite playmate of mine when we were small. The only problem was we were separated so much because my family was always taking long trips to Europe and such. One time I remember crying all the way down to the docks, and I wrote in my diary that night, "It was so hard parting from my friend." But then I became older and interested in other things, bugs and such, and I even started my own Roosevelt Museum of Natural History in my room, and my interest in Edie waned a bit. My childhood education was basically through tutors, but I entered Harvard in 1876, and at this age, my interest in Edie had been revived. You know, when Edie dresses well and don't frizzle her hair, she is a very pretty girl.
While Theodore was away at school, I took a trip to Washington and went through the White House with other tourists. I wrote back to Corinne, "Today, for the first time, I went to the White House. How unlikely it is that I shall ever again come in contact with it."
That on February the 9th, 1878, the best man I ever knew, my father, passed on from this world. He combined strength and courage with gentleness, tenderness, and a great unselfishness. I can never truly express the unique bond that I felt with my father, except to say that I wrote in my diary, "Would to God I could do something to keep his memory alive." It would be trying to live up to my father's memory that would compel me throughout my life in government service. Then in August of that year, I spent 4 lovely days with Edie.
Sailing one day.
And rowing the next.
A drive and a picnic the following day.
And then our rendezvous in the summer house. Alone.
And you were not nice. After that incident, Theodore and I broke up. You may continue this story on your own.
Oh, very well, Edie. This must be one of your bad days that come along occasionally. All right, now let me see. Where were we? Oh, yes. In 1884, I decided to go west to the Dakota Badlands to run my cattle ranch at Elkhorn along the Little Missouri River.
Thee, you cannot jump from 1878 to 1884. You need to let them know what happened in between.
And Edith, you know very well that I do not discuss those things. If you wish to impart that knowledge, you may do so, but I am going to stand here and not listen.
Well, it was during those years that Theodore met Alice Hathaway Lee, and it was their wedding that I attended. I must admit she was a beautiful girl, but a bit boring for my taste. after their marriage, Teddy, as she liked to call him, was elected to the State Assembly, where he served for 2.5 years and made quite a name for himself. Then occurred that horrible Valentine's Day, February 14th, 1884. On February 12th, Alice had given birth to a beautiful baby girl, whom they also named Alice. Early the next day, Thee's brother Elliot sent him a telegram, telling him to come home immediately. Their mother was dying in a downstairs room, while upstairs Theodore's wife Alice was also facing death due to complications brought on by Bright's disease, a kidney disease. That morning Theodore watched his loving mother pass on, and then he cradled his wife in his arms until she too passed away. After their burial, Theodore never mentioned his wife again, not even to his daughter. Well, that may seem harsh, but to Theodore that is how great grief should be handled. As he later wrote to a friend who had suffered a great tragedy,
The only thing for her to do now is to treat the past as past and out of her life. Though she certainly cannot avoid thinking of it, she can avoid speaking of it.
well, it was then that Thee left the state legislature and went west. Well, over the next year and a half, Theodore would return to New York for visits, but he seemed to be purposely avoiding me.
Absolutely. I was now destined to be a bachelor. For in those days, men who married a second time were thought to have a character defect.
Well, knowing how Theodore felt, I arranged my visits to see his sister Bammy at times when Theodore would not be there. Then in the fall of 1885, as I was leaving from a visit, Theodore arrived home. Our eyes met for the first time in 19 months. We began to meet, at first secretly, but on November 17th, Thee proposed to me. We decided to postpone the wedding, however, out of Theodore's concern for how people would view such a quick remarriage. So he went back west, and I eventually went to Europe, where my family was now living.
Edith and I wrote to each other, and I loved receiving her letters, even if they did include slight reprisals.
Of course, you absurd Mr. T.R. I do not wish you to write often if you do it as a duty. But if you do it for pleasure, as I write you, then we both can enjoy your letters. I do not think you sentimental in the least to love nature. Oh, please love me too, and believe that I think of you all the time, and I want so much to see you.
I returned to New York and ran unsuccessfully for mayor of New York. And then, just a few weeks after that defeat, my sister and I, Anna, under assumed names, sailed for Europe, and on December the 2nd, 1886, we were wed. I was 28, Edith was 25. We then